those strangers could be non-Jews, or those strangers could be seculars. Seculars, us, you. And when Israel do not perform the will of omnipresent, their work is carried out by themselves, as it is said, and thou shalt gather in thy court. Now, my purpose here is not to enter into the discourse of whether work is important or not important, but rather to introduce the category of derech Eretz. Derech Eretz begins in our tradition as a category for that which the Am Haaretz, that which the person who's not the student of Torah, that which you do when you're not doing Torah. Torah is A, derech Eretz is non-A. If derech Eretz is B, Torah is non-B. They are two completely different disciplines. There is the study of Torah, there's the observance of Torah, and there is the needs of the land, the needs of everyday life. And there is debate. To what extent the goal of Torah is to create an individual disconnected from everyday life, or the goal of Torah is to create an individual who, quite to the contrary, combines everyday life, because only in this way do you create the healthy, non-sinning individual. That's stage one. Derech Eretz is that which the Am Haaretz does. They work the land. That's derech Eretz. Now we go to stage two in the development of the category. Yes?
What is the basis on which the Haredi say the two are not compatible?
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. If you could hear it, if you plow in the plowing season, sow in the sowing season, reap in the reaping season, thresh in the threshing season, and winnow in the winnowing season, are you going to be a Talmid Chacham? Are you?
Why can you not do both? What is the
Because
reason
they say,
why
I'll say
they
it again.
say you cannot do both?
Because to be a farmer means you have to plow in the plowing season, sow in the sowing season, reap in the reaping season, thresh in the threshing season, winnow in the winnowing season. No time.
Full-time job.
It's you gotta have a full-time job. Torah is life, you have to choose, basically. Making a living is a full-time job. And if you do that, Torah will be a hobby at best. And if you actually look, one of the interesting paradoxes, not a paradox, the interesting thing, outside of the ultra-Orthodox community, there are very few Talmidei Chachamim. You know what a Talmid Chacham means? Very few Torah scholars. Outside of the ultra-Orthodox world, there are very few Torah scholars. The only place that also produces Torah scholars is a place that is very similar to the Haredi world, with one exception, and that is that you get a salary for doing so instead of a government stipend, and that is academia. Academia, very, very similar to the Haredi, to the yeshiva ethos. From the morning till night, you live in your books, you think a footnote matters, and you get paid for doing so. You get paid for doing so. One, you can get paid by your university and student, depends, or you get stipends, you get grants, you get research. It's the exact same thing. Yeshiva students, academics, the academics in Judaica. Outside of that, the average rabbi who has to winnow in the winnowing season, who has to bar mitzvah people in the bar mitzvah season, bury people in the burying season, lead services in the service season, comfort people in the comforting season, is not a Talmid Chacham. That is not an opinion, that is a factual statement. A factual statement. So, that they say, if you want to do this, you got to do it right. That's their position. But what I want you to do is, this is not a class about this ideology. I needed to bring this text because I want to show you how it is, how they understood it. They understood it to mean the ways of the Am Haaretz, the working of the land. All the ideological statement about that, we could all leave for another time. That's not where I want to go. I want to get to what is the connection between working the land and the ultimate development of derech Eretz as the ethical. There's a journey. That's where I want to concentrate. But I think this you here.
Just quickly, I'm wondering, well, you said it became a Haredi view, but it's not like Rob Ishmael is, to use a technical term, chopped liver. and so, did this become more the view? Because also it was in, one of the tractates in Outweighed Pure Vote, which is sort of the introduction. Where, why was not Reb Ishmael's view and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai?
Now, ultimately, they were, for most of Jewish history, till the 19th century.
Okay.
The opinion that prevailed was Rabbi Ishmael.
Right.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai starts in the 19th century, 18th century, 17th. Somewhere along the line where you have Lithuanian yeshivot begin to start, that was not part of the culture of it never appeared in the Sephardic culture. It was not part of the Sephardic culture, and it was not part of the culture of most Jews, including Maimonides, who works during the day and doesn't sleep at night. That was his balance. But it becomes a part of the Lithuanian Jewish ethos somewhere, I think probably in the 18th century is when it started. And then, but they were both in the tradition. But let's leave our favorite punching block away for now. The Haredi, let's just leave them out. It was just open up a window, file it, know that it's there. That's where it comes from. Good. Now, ethics. Leave that. Okay. So, if someone has a question, I'll take it. But you should be embarrassed if you're not listening to what I just said. I couldn't be clearer. Could I be any clearer? No. No, so I'm saying I just don't want to, that's not what I want to talk about. So, and I get to decide. Okay? But I don't know what your question is, so in order to be polite, I have to enable you to ask the question. But you could ask, if it's on the Haredi issue, ask me it later. Okay? Now.
You want to go on the journey.
What is the authority of Shimon ben Yochai? Who is he?
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the great rabbis.
But what era? I mean,
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is, where is Rabbi? Right, he's the first, I think it is the first, yes, he's the first generation after destruction of the temple.
okay, so he doesn't come from the Babylonian tractate then?
It doesn't matter, that's where the text appears. No one comes from.
It does appear in the Babylonian tractate?
Yes, Babylonian Talmud Tractate Brachot
It does.
35b. Oh, yes.
Okay.
This is its source in, now,
That's what I was unclear
he is
about.
one of the Tanaim, he's one of the early rabbis, the early authorities of Jewish law. And what happens is when both positions are there, later generations come along and you have on what to build. Let's go to stage 2.
Let's go.
Okay?
Yes.
Stage 2.
We're ready.
We're going.
Now, the most repeated reference to the term derech Eretz in the Talmud is the following. And they are short, pithy statements. Something like, the Torah taught us derech Eretz, a man should not put all of his money in one hiding place. The Torah taught us derech Eretz, a man should not set out for a journey accompanied by less than 2 persons, because it's dangerous. The Torah taught us derech Eretz, if a man builds a ship, which is to stand upright, he must make its breadth 1/6 of its length, and its height 1/10 of its length. This comes from the measurement of Noah's ark.
By cubits.
What?
By cubits.
They have cubits there, but they just said they got from there whatever. I believe. The Torah taught us derech Eretz. A person should be respectful to the governments, those in power. It's just, otherwise they'll kill you. The Torah taught a derech Eretz. A person should first build a house, then plant a vineyard, and only afterwards marry a woman. What are these first 5 or 6? Derech Eretz here is not the working of the land. It is common sense. Look at there is what the common man does, and now we move to common sense. Common sense is don't put all your chickens in one basket. Chickens or eggs in one basket.
Don't put all your money in the Adolf.
Don't put all your money in one place. Common, here it is. How do you want your boat to float? Well, there has to be a proper proportion between its length, height, and otherwise it's going to tip. These are common knowledge. Now, this common knowledge, it's very interesting as it is. The Torah is referencing or reporting on or validating common knowledge. It's teaching you that which the builder knows. Now, one of the reasons why the Torah has to remind you is that we all know that common sense is not common.
Right.
But that's the interesting paradox. There's the common wisdom. There's the wisdom. Here what happens is we've shifted. There is Torah. Torah takes up time. And derech Eretz is life. Living on the land. Living in the world. Stage 2 is that living in the world produces its own Torah. Not a Torah that you get from revelation, but a Torah that you get from common sense. And Torah tries to validate, remind you. So now we have derech Eretz is common sense. And Torah needs common sense. So when you come, you have to be an Am Haaretz, because by being an Am Haaretz, you have common sense. If you're not an Am Haaretz, you just don't know how to function in the world. You don't know how to build a boat. No, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. We're going to see it's going to get there in a moment. But right now, ethics is not derech Eretz. Derech Eretz is common sense. And now we go the next stage. The Torah taught us derech Eretz. A person who travels to a foreign country and has his own provisions should not eat from them, but should rather leave them and buy from the local shopkeepers. That's not common sense, like because they're going to kill you. They're not the government. What is this?
Becoming
Courtesy. This is now common courtesy. Notice we use the term common courtesy. Common courtesy is not common. So the Torah now is reminding you common courtesy. It's not Jewish law. It's just, here it is. You have merchants who are trying to make a living. When you're traveling through, keep your food for emergencies. When you encounter a merchant, they need to make a living too, just like you need to. When you buy from them, the Torah taught us derech Eretz. A man should inquire regarding the well-being of his host's wife. Did Shmuel not teach us that one should never inquire regarding a woman because it leads to mixed dancing? Asking your husband. This is the old yeshiva joke. I apologize, some of you are not familiar with yeshiva humor. Yeshiva humor, the rabbi, they'll say, oh my God, they're holding hands. They're holding hands is going to lead to hugging, and hugging is going to lead to kissing, and kissing is going to lead to sex, and sex is going to lead to many sex. So, the whole idea is like, it's like, this slippery slope. So like it's, anyway, it's making fun of the yeshiva, of the putting a fence around a fence around a fence, because the word, and you have to be a yeshiva to find it. The Torah taught us derech Eretz. A person should not speak to another unless he calls his name first. It's common courtesy. Speak to him. It's not, these aren't things that you need in order to survive. It's not, by doing this, I could work the land. By doing this, my boat will float. Here, it's courtesy. It's being polite. Now it's even more, the first one is, it's like being, there's manners. Speak this way. It's a mannerly way. It's a polite way to behave. Politeness is very, very important. Political correctness. Yes, please?
When you say the Torah taught us, are you saying?
It's not me. This is what the rabbis.
What?
They're quoting a verse.
They are quoting.
They're quoting a verse which says something which you wouldn't identify. And on the basis of that verse, they're saying, the purpose of this verse is basically to remind you, it's not a commandment. The Torah is reminding you or teaching you a common courtesy.
But there's a transition between, there's an absolute statement in the Torah.
There is a statement,
Just
but it's not an
distinct
absolute statement, because
just
on
distinct
your own,
from these.
you would never be, and the reason why I didn't bring it is because you would never be able to associate from those words what the rabbis are going. It would take you a tremendous amount of time. The easier case would be in Genesis chapter 7, when it gives you the measurements of Noah's Ark. Why is the Torah giving you the measurements of Noah's Ark? They're teaching you derech Eretz. How do you float a boat? How do you float a boat? That would be, so they take three words. What are these three? And this is part of the rabbinic tradition in which every word of Torah is there to teach you something. And so, many of these things, this is not part of the 613 commandments. So what is the Torah? If the Torah wants to command, what are they doing? Here they're teaching me, the Torah is filled with things that aren't part of obedience of Torah. They're not part of mitzvah. They're part of either common sense, or now we have common courtesy, politeness, manners. Okay? So and by the way, if you want to see a parallel of this, an interesting list, George Washington. Google it. George Washington on the 128 rules of etiquette or courtesy. There's a fascinating, George Washington has a facet. I wanted to save on paper because we weren't going to, but it also how don't, for example, scratch your head and pull out lice. And then give your hand to somebody. Or there's a whole bunch of, you have to see there's this whole, it's now, nobility has this list to go beyond. But here, basic common courtesy. The Torah, now it shifts again a little bit. Beforehand it was politeness. And now it even has sometimes an etiquette dimension to it.
Is that the political correctness?
Yes, there's an etiquette. Sometimes etiquette is political correctness. The Torah teaches you derech Eretz. A garment worn while cooking for a dignitary should not be worn when serving the dignitary a cup of wine. We don't like. Anybody like to see a dirty chef's clothes? You know what? I don't want to eat food. Like it's one thing what goes on behind the kitchen. When you're out, I don't want to see your. It's just not. Don't serve at your table. Then there's courtesy. The Torah taught us derech Eretz not to stay as a guest at your relatives for more than a month. There's actually an opinion which says 5 days. Not the one for 30 days, because that would be, that sounds to me more that 5 days is too stringent. Now, so we have common manners, We have common sense, we have manners, we have political correctness, we have politeness. Now this journey starts moving forward. The Torah taught us derech Eretz, that a bridegroom should not enter the bridal chamber unless the bride gives him permission. Now technically, he purchased her. Technically, a wife is not allowed to refuse, in antiquity, her husband sexual advances. Don't go into the bridal chamber. You just got married. Now, it's not mere political correctness or manner. You're seeing somebody. What do you need to do? How should you behave? Now it's politeness with a moral dimension to it. A very, very different version. The Torah taught us derech Eretz. Sexual intercourse should not take place in the daytime, but only in the night. This already has to do with what do they believe distinguishes a human being from an animal. I'm not saying whether they're correct or wrong. That's not my point. But here, it's not politeness. You have your higher purposes, you have your lower purposes, and in their world, controlling your lower impulses was critical in order for you to be a person of higher